Hello everyone, my name is James and this is the first Warhammer mini I've painted in about 19 years. Now, I can't remember exactly when my childhood Warhammer obsession started. I think I was around 13 years old, but I don't really have many pictures from that part of my life. The only one that I could find is this one here and oh god. But you can see, like, in the corner, there's some Warhammers there. So it was about, 13 years old. I'm not sure what has gotten into me lately, but over the last couple of years I have started watching other people paint their Warhammer minis because, quite frankly, yeah, I've missed the hobby. I have a lot of fond memories getting the new Battle for Middle-earth magazine whenever it was issued, complete with tools, paints, models, everything you really needed to get started, and it just came with each issue, and it was really like a really good move by Games Workshop and New Line Cinema, whoever sponsored that thing. The problem, as it usually is with me, is I already have quite a few, let's say, expensive hobbies. I have already been a lifelong gamer and I like to make music from time to time, as you probably know if you've been with this channel since the beginning. But after watching so many videos from channels such as Midwinter Minis, MS Paints and Squidmar, I decided to dip my toe back into the old childhood hobby. So if any of you are watching from any of those channels, thanks. This is all your fault. Now, I didn't want to go absolutely nuts and buy everything that I needed to do the hobby again. Things change and I honestly wasn't sure if I would like doing the practical side of it. So what I did instead was I dusted off my old collection of Warhammer that has been sitting in a box for close to 15 years maybe. I don't know, it's been a long time. This is so weird, I need a teleprompter. Like I said before, I bought the Battle for Middle-earth magazines whenever they came out, so the majority of what I did have was Lord of the Ring models, but I also had a few Space Marines in there, some Tyranids and some Dark Elder. Okay, for some reason. I think I was just an idiot 14-year-old and I just bought whatever looked cool. I never really played the game back then either. I just really wanted something to paint, display and collect. And boy, was I ever bad at the painting bit. Just look at the state of some of these. Good lord. I genuinely thought I did an okay job looking at some of them, but looking back as an adult, past James, those adults that told you they looked awesome and you did a good job, yeah, they lied. Sorry about that. These are fucking awful. Anyways, as I was trudging through my old collection, I came across this absolute fucking beast that I completely forgot about. This is a winged Nazgul and he is an absolute fucking unit. I don't even know if they still make or sell this. I had a look on the Warhammer website and I found a different winged Nazgul but in a different pose, so I really don't know what's going on there. I think I remember it costing me, I think it cost about 30 quid at the time. So not a small investment for a 13 to 14-year-old kid. I would absolutely love to get around to restoring this one day, but we'll see how it goes. But that's enough reminiscing about the past. In order to restart this hobby, I had to make a trip down to my local hobby store, Battlefield Hobbies, to buy a few tools. I picked up this Get Started box, a hobby knife, a few different brushes, and this drill thing. Yeah, this one. Spins. Cool. I don't really have a use for it right now, but a lot of other people seem to have them, so I thought I'd buy it in case I need it for the future and I want to pin things. It will be especially helpful on that winged Nazgul that I mentioned before. Now, I have some beef with Games Workshop on the box that I picked up because the box art sort of implies you get a Space Marine and a Necron to paint up along with the tools and stuff. Like, Tell me that doesn't imply that. It makes sense, right? And here's me discovering that it doesn't come with any models at all as I was recording the B-roll for this video. Genuinely, like, really annoyed. It's a paints and tools set, like a get started set, and they don't give you a model to get started with. Like, it advertises on the box, hey, you can paint these guys. Don't fucking give you the guys. Where are my guys? Come on, Games Workshop. You're already overpriced. Stop being cheap fucking bastards. Putting that aside, I still had to try and find an unpainted model from my collection to paint up. I narrowed the choices down to this Tyrannid, or one of his many unpainted brethren. Some cool looking Space Marine chaplain. At least I think he's a chaplain. I have no recollection, again, of buying this dude. I think he just looked cool, so I got him. And finally, I have this rando rocket guy that I was able to find. Since the box I purchased was to paint up some Space Marines, I chose the rando rocket guy because I thought it would, quite frankly, just be the easiest. Let me tell you, none of this was easy. Firstly, you'll notice that this is not a swanky new Primaris Space Marine. The model is much smaller, not glued together in any way, and has an annoying deformity on his rocket shoulder that I was not able to rectify with the tools that I had. Still, I knew this wasn't going to be a masterpiece, so I decided, what the hell, and steamed on ahead. I did my best to remove any mold lines and smooth out the model, which took way longer than I expected. I then went about base coating the model. Since I wasn't sure how much painting I was going to do and if I was really going to get back into the hobby, I did not buy any spray primers or anything like that. That was a mistake. Basing this thing with Abaddon Black took way longer than I expected it to, and it was not fun. Good start. I really wasn't sure how thick or thin the base coat needed to be when I was doing it by brush, and my memories from when I was a kid doing it failed me. So it was a lot of guesswork here and there, and it seemed to turn out okay, I think. Now, I'm really not trying to follow any particular guide that I've seen. I'm just winging it after watching countless videos on YouTube over the last couple of years. So again, thanks Midwinter Minis, MS Paints, Squidmar. Again, this is all your fault, but thank you for the inspiration. I remembered that painting on black was a pain in the ass, even from my teenage days, so I wanted to try and mimic lightening it up and doing some pre-highlights by dry brushing some Corax white onto the Mini. When it comes to dry brushing, it really is an art in itself, and it was really difficult for me to tell when all or enough of the paint was removed from the brush in order to get a good consistent dry brush. After my poor attempt, it didn't really look awful, but it didn't look good either. And then came the basing. I thinned down and slapped on some McCrag blue all over the model, and again I had no idea if my paint thickness was good or not. I think it was a bit off in some areas, maybe they were too thin, some were too thick. It's kind of hardly tell because of the black prime underneath from the step before. So it really was just a paint and see approach. I followed this up with a wash of Agrax Earthshade to try and mute the colours a bit, and it did an okay job. Back in my day, we didn't really have dedicated shade paints that I can remember. I just recall reading that, hey, you should really do washes and just mix some black with a ton of water, and there you go. This step wasn't too bad. I think it muted the blue down a bit too much, so I went back and tried to add back some more of the blue in the center of each armor panel. After that, I tried to edge highlight with a mix of my blue and white paints, but at this point I realized how hard it was to hold a model and a brush steady to get those fine details. I never really noticed how much movement there was in my hands all of this time, but it seemed to get better when I braced properly. The problem is, because I was trying to film at the same time, I couldn't get a good brace with the frame and the lighting setup that I had. And oh, speaking of lighting, there we go, I have this cool little lamp, little circular lamp that also has a magnifying glass, which is kind of cool. So yeah. After royally fucking up the edge highlights, I called it quits for the day and took a sleep, and the next morning I based all of the metallic parts with lead belcher, and then layered on some Retributor Armor Gold over the top, and I think that bit turned out okay. On a side note, I found the new Citadel pots are really awkward and tough to open. I really didn't want to force it open and just fling my paint everywhere, so I kind of miss the old screw style Citadel pots that you used to get. Maybe I was just smaller back then, but they also seemed a bit bigger. But yeah, apparently those things had an issue of drying out over time. I can't really remember. I left the hobby before they went out of style, so if someone could let me know down in the comments, that would be handy, I guess. Anyways, my attention was somewhat waning at this point, so I attempted to edge highlight some of my gold with Runefang steel, and I must say, this is a really nice bright metallic paint. I may have loaded up my brush too much though, but that should get better with experience. Once that step was complete, I tinted the gold with Agrax Earthshade, since the brown was really nice over the gold. I felt like I was on the home stretch at this point, so I mixed together some light grey to paint the belt. And I really was not sure what colour to paint this. I didn't have any references to go by. I mean, I probably could have, but I just couldn't be bothered to look, and I had limited amounts of paint. But I thought it would be okay. Whilst I was doing this, I decided to base a few parts of the rocket launcher this colour too. I thought it would help bring out the red accents that I was going to paint over it, and yeah, again, it's like the pattern with most of this video, it seemed okay. Then it was time for the eyes. This was a challenge. I used my detail brush, but it seemed like there was no actual tip that I could use to this thing. Focus. It's not focusing. I used some Mephiston red to try and fill out the eyes, and then I tried mixing in some white to fade into a white dot that I remember seeing from a lot of other tutorials. This turned out to make some sort of lovely pale salmon, but it didn't look good on the marine. I wicked it away whilst it was still wet and tried my best to do a dab of white onto the lens. And honestly, I think he looks like he has some weird ass eyes. But at this point, I'd been painting for numerous hours, so I was pretty tired and I just wanted to finish. It was at this point I thought maybe another dry brush of white would help bring out those edge highlights a bit more, but I've yet to really master how to do dry brushing. Every time I thought I had all of the paint off my brush, I would scrape it across the model and just a big blob of streaky white would just slap itself on there. So what I did was I just ended up wiping that off before it had dried and moved on. I based the model with some Astro Granite technical paint, and I must say this is a very, very nice thing to have. It's a texture paint, I believe, and it's a really, really nice way to base models that's really cheap and for people that are just starting out and they don't want to do these whole complicated foliage, landscape sort of things. I gave it a black wash as well to try and make it a bit more dynamic. I did final assembly and ended up with this. Is this model bad? No. But put it next to one of my Blood Angels that I painted up at when I was a kid, and it really stands out as being a lot better in my opinion. And don't mind this dude, he's just missing an arm. Personally, I think most of my Blood Angels were abominations, and what I've done today, or this week, was way more detailed, but I would not exactly say that it is good. It's probably tabletop acceptable, and I'm proud of it in a strange way, but only as a base to see how far I can improve in the future. And that is it. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments below, and once again, another thank you to the 3 main channels that inspired me to make this video. That's Midwinter Minis, MS Paints, and Squidmar. Hopefully I'll be able to continue this hobby and do a few more videos, and you'll be able to see some improvement over the years. And eventually I would like to play a full game with a full painted army. But for now, thank you very much for watching.